Hi, and welcome to the Bruce Channel. I'm Bruce, and away we go. All right, so even had he lost the election, history was made 8 years ago when Barack Obama became the first non-white nominee of a major party. Now we've done another first, the first non-male nominee of a major party. I don't know why it's taken so long, really. It's not like we haven't become used to seeing women lead other countries. Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister of India. That was decades ago. And Cory Aquino, President of the Philippines. And not only Asia, Golda Meir led Israel. Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady, was Prime Minister of the UK. And Angela Merkel is right now Germany's Chancellor. We have had two women as major party vice presidential candidates. Geraldine Ferraro ran with Walter Mondale 32 years ago. And then in that historic election 8 years ago, Sarah Palin was John McCain's running mate. But if you count more than just the major parties, lots of women have been running for president. Jill Stein and Cynthia McKinney, both for the Green Party. Linda Janess for the Socialist Workers' Party. Many, many others. The first woman to run, albeit nominated not by a major party, but instead by the Equal Rights Party, was Victoria Woodhull back in 1872. I remember it well. All right, so we have our two candidates, but I rather hate it when either party coronates rather than actually has some discussion. True enough, Bernie Sanders discussed issues for a long time, and for far briefer, so did Martin O'Malley. And yes, Hillary Clinton got more votes than anyone, but I said this last fall. It just seemed as though Democratic National Chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz intentionally scheduled those debates in a way that would avoid large audiences when there were big attractions elsewhere. And thus, if fewer people see the debate, then the results for any primary would favor the one having the most name recognition. I said that. Debbie Wasserman Schultz said, no, nothing could be farther than the truth. And then we learned last weekend, through emails leaked by WikiLeaks, that there really was some serious intent by party officials to favor Hillary. There was worry that Bernie Sanders' religion, he's Jewish, would hurt his chances. So it's rather stinky, isn't it? Now, previously at the GOP convention, Ted Cruz got booed by people in his own party. So for the Dems, this was supposed to be the big love fest. And instead, Debbie Wasserman Schultz gets booed by her people, and bang, she's forced to resign. Yeah, I just cannot imagine how we ended up with these two people whose unfavorable ratings are the highest in history. I mean, Hillary's would be the worst in history, except there's this other guy whose numbers are even worse, Donald Trump. Wow, America. Oh, last weekend, when I first heard that the emails had been leaked, and then the Democrats were saying, well, they may have been hacked by the Russians in order to help Donald Trump, I thought, well, that's not even as good as my dog ate my homework. Come on. But then I read what some serious and nonpartisan, really uber security experts had to say. And, I don't know for sure that it was to help Trump, but the hack looks like it could have been the Russians. And I don't know, but apparently I have no idea why. But then I did hear Donald Trump talking about the Democrats, talking about the Russians and himself. And then I heard him say, "You've never met Putin." Well, that clanged a little bit. So I looked it up, and sure enough, last year.
But as far as the Ukraine is concerned, and you could say Syria, as far as Syria, I like if Putin wants to go in, and I got to know him very well because we were both on 60 Minutes. We were stablemates, and we did very well that night.
And then this week.
But I have nothing to do with Russia, nothing to do. I never met Putin.
Oh, and this from like 2 years ago.
And I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer. And we had a tremendous success. The show was live from Moscow, and we had a tremendous success there, and it was amazing.
I actually remember Donald Trump from before The Art of the Deal. If you've watched us here, you know that I'm a football fan, and in fact, I was a much bigger fan years ago. I was living in Tampa when the United States Football League was formed. It was in some cities where the NFL was, cities like Chicago and Philadelphia and Tampa, and some cities where there was no NFL, like Memphis. Now, who in their right mind would watch the Tampa Bay Bandits in the USFL instead of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of the NFL? Even if Burt Reynolds was part owner, who'd watch the Bandits instead of the Bucs? Well, hardcore football fans might, because the season started in the spring. Back when I was a super fan, I watched every NFL game I could see. I was always a little sad after the Super Bowl, feeling like, well, now what do I do? And then to answer the sad question came riding to the rescue the USFL and the Tampa Bay Bandits, hot daily dirt. The New York area team was the New Jersey Generals, and the New Jersey Generals were owned by, guess who? Yeah, that's right, sports fans. Donald Trump, you may or may not recall that he signed some pretty good players. Players like NFL quarterback and former MVP Brian Sipe. The Generals also had Heisman Trophy winner, running back Herschel Walker. So, all right, the odds may be long against it, but they might still be playing today if they'd stayed in the spring. True enough, not all the teams had financial success. Some folded, others moved, but some did okay. But instead, the league committed professional suicide. They changed their schedule to go head-to-head against the NFL in the fall, and they went out of existence. Guess who wanted them to make that dumb move? Right again, sports fan, Donald Trump. He argued that head-to-head against the NFL would have to merge or at least absorb some of the teams. Now, there was precedent for that. 3 teams, including my Browns, moved from the All-America Conference to the NFL in 1950, and the AFL merged with the NFL, 1966, 68, something like that. But it usually doesn't work. The World Football League and the XFL and others all folded. All right. Not to exclusively pick on the Donald, just so you know, I'm going to see a documentary film called Hillary's America, and I'll let you know next show what I think. I don't think I'm being a spoiler, though. You can find a trailer, and it's probably clear the filmmakers are not fans of Hillary. Last couple words about politics. I'm not sure exactly when. Obamaland looks like it won't maybe be out by summer's end, but one of the producers assured me it would be by election day. Fair enough. Okay. And, I've shown some footage from this site from time to time, but remember the penultimate night of the Republican convention when Ted Cruz left the stage being booed because he wouldn't endorse Donald Trump? Our talented friends at Bad Lip Reading have taken that. I think the part that I enjoyed the best was how they integrated the crowd shots, saying these nonsense words, but the crowd shots were great. Here's a bit.
Oh, Mr. Trump. The guy's a creep. Think he's cool? I bet you don't like his brows. What bugs me the most are the hair puppets. Not the hair balls. But I love those. They're wonderful. Please don't go eat them. I call dibs. Like hair. Anywho, last summer I was with Trump and we were by the pool.
And to enjoy the whole thing, just Google Cruz Talks Trump. Maybe add Bad Lip Reading, and you'll find it. All right, one more political note. President Obama on Wednesday night spoke of Hillary Clinton's experience and readiness for the office. He said this.
And that's why I can say with confidence, there has never been a man or a woman, not me, not Bill, nobody, more qualified than Hillary Clinton to serve as President of the United States of America. I hope you don't mind, Bill, but I was just telling the truth, man.
He was wrong. Now, it's true. I'm not saying he's lying, he's forgetting. It's true that if elected, she would have a lot of experience, more than almost anyone. George W. Bush's dad was there, so W might have had an idea. But it's likely true, even if Hillary had lived there for 8 years, which she did, and was Secretary of State, you know? And she certainly would know about early morning phone calls and late night phone calls and emergencies. And yeah, all of that would help. She would perhaps have more foreknowledge than almost anyone else. John Kennedy, whose father was ambassador to Great Britain during the early part of World War II, he got to know world leaders. He had the education and money to see the world, and he was in Congress for 14 years. But he famously said after becoming president, there's not a damn thing that can prepare you for this job. So I say again, should Hillary Clinton be elected, she would be one of the most prepared ever, but not the most. There's only one person holding that distinction, our 24th president, Grover Cleveland. Inasmuch as he was also our 22nd president, it is a lockdown, cinch fact that he already knew what the job entailed. Finally, I've mentioned some of the names of the women candidates for president, some of the parties that they represented. I didn't mention my favorite. My favorite ran in 1940, Gracie Allen. Yes, she of Burns and Allen.
So I said, well, flip a coin, and if it comes out heads, have your hair dyed.
And if it comes out tails, say goodnight, Gracie.
She ran representing the surprise party. All right, you've likely seen some of the pictures of the fires in California. These that I'm about to show you are not taken from the news. These were taken by a friend of mine, posted to her Facebook page, outside her house, outside her window. Massive fire. Of course, it could have been much worse. My friend did not have to evacuate. She has to clean ash from her pool, but as she said, some just a few miles away didn't even get to have that. Meanwhile, here we've hit our normal anymore drought. I've lived in a number of places in the southeast, excepting Florida, where, it's 3:30, time for our afternoon thunder shower. Most places in the southeast where I've lived, thanks to the abundant humidity served up by the Gulf, most places get the popcorn thunder showers every day. The thing is, everybody doesn't get one every day, but in my memory, in anyone's yard, you might get 2 or 3 a week. Here in North Carolina and in Memphis, that kind of weather used to mean that to keep it manageable, for a good part of the summer, you'd have to mow the lawn more often than once a week, every 5 days or so. Now, more often than not, the lawn is crunchy. Mowing once a week is frequently enough, sometimes not even. And, that certainly wouldn't be news in the Southwest, but here, it's a little unusual. Oh, and I only learned that this year it is the Northeast where they're struggling with a punishing drought. I know, it's the end of July. We cannot, or at least we should not, be surprised that it's hot. One little last word about not really the weather, actually, but what I actually heard on television. They came back from a commercial break. The weather person was the first to speak. I'm going to conceal the call letters. I'm not going to embarrass her by using her name. But honestly, give this a look. Give a listen.
You're looking over High Point Regional, where you can see it's a dark start to your day, but it is quiet.
One more time.
You're looking over High Point Regional, where you can see it's a dark start to your day, but it is quiet.
All right, I have done morning television. Not everything that comes out of a person's mouth is necessarily brilliant. We can see it's 5:11 in the morning. It's a dark start to your day. Has there, in the entire known history of the planet, ever been a start to the day that wasn't dark?
Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. Or wait, I can let others do it.
Welcome back. Remember, you can write to us at the Bruce Channel at yahoo.com, and you can watch all of our previous shows at either our Facebook page or tinyworld.com/Bruce Channel. So, going through an old drawer, I found a blast from the past. Remember these? Back in the day when we took pictures on film cameras, we had to have somebody develop the film. And, such still exists, but we don't use it so much, some pros. But you could take your film to the drugstore or a photo store, or you could mail your film to be developed. They develop, print, send your pictures back to you by mail. Clark Color Laboratories. You know what? They still exist. I don't think they do much film developing, but you can find them online. They'll put your picture on a mug or a pillow or a bag. You get the idea. Thinking of that, though, reminded me of another film thing, but it is gone, really gone. If you didn't want to mail in your film, I remember having done that once or twice, but if it were really irreplaceable stuff like your prom or your wedding, you really want to send it through the mail? That's not a slam of the Postal Service. We all send things and they almost always safely arrive, but we've all had a thing or two go awry, so if film is really one of a kind and irreplaceable, probably take it to the drugstore or the photo store. Or, take it to Photomat. That was one of the greatest ideas, Started in California, little kiosk island, same parking lot as a grocery store or something, low rent because they required so little space. You didn't go in the store, you just drove up, dropped it off, picked up your pictures the next day. You could buy film. I mean, that was convenient. There were more than 4,000 of them all over. And then you know what happened to film cameras. There's a lesson in all that. Clark Color Labs adapted. Photomat actually tried to adapt. They began renting out VHS tapes, but not like Family Video or Blockbuster. They didn't have the real estate. Instead, you had to call it in the day before, tell them I'm going to pick it up at this Photomat. That didn't work out so well. Still, I think the bigger lesson is digital photography was actually invented by Kodak. Big companies and small want profits. Kodak made cameras, but as true for printers today, the sale of the printer isn't the big deal, it's the ink. They'll sell you a razor cheap, but the razor blade profits go on forever. Kodak's cash cow was film and chemicals. The chemicals you needed to develop the film. So here's this digital photography thingy. That's not going to help their profit center. Besides that, it came out of research and development, and in a lot of corporate cultures, R&D is a cost. It's not something you like. It's a necessary cost. Sad, isn't it? They had this great thing, failed to see its greatness, mistaking the short view, immediate profits, for the longer view, and they failed to very well stay in the game. All right, a dark start to your day isn't the worst thing in the world. Not necessarily without cause. Bill Maher often declares we're a stupid country. I would challenge that. I'd say instead that out of the over 300 million people in the country, a good number are stupid. But 2 points about that. Point one, sometimes it's simply a failure to think of the consequences, not stupidity. And point two, it's not exclusive to this country. Did you see the story out of China this week? I'm not going to show you the footage. But here's what we think we know. Near Beijing is a wildlife park. You can drive through the park in your car. There is a sign that says, cherish your life, never get out of your car. So the way I heard the story, a woman gets into a row with her husband. She gets out of the stopped car, walks around to the driver's side, presumably to further yell at her husband. He opens the door, but before she can take another step, a fully grown Siberian tiger grabs her and drags her off. That's the world's biggest cats, folks. They're over 900 pounds. Lions are like 600. The husband tries to help, and then out of the back seat comes the woman's female friend, also to the help. A second tiger takes the friend. That's the woman who was killed. The first woman was badly mauled. Some years ago, my brother-in-law, an avid hunter, was stalked and attacked by a mountain lion. By the way, they only get to 270 pounds. He heard it coming, and he got off literally a life-saving shot. He wasn't hunting mountain lions. But as I understand it, he nevertheless had to register with the Rangers. It was legal, it was self-defense, and he still has the pelt. I have held the claws in my hands. Like maybe, I don't know, really, really long and sharper than you could imagine. You could probably slice your Thanksgiving turkey. They are that sharp. Cherish your life. Never get out of the car. And it only takes a moment or two of not thinking. From time to time, I have suggested we send a thank you to someone. The criteria are rather simple, and for that matter, loosely bound. Someone whose work we've enjoyed, whether musically or in film or what have you. And someone who, for the most part, while once enjoying a good deal of public attention, is now largely in shadow. And the person ought to be closer to the close than the opening. Let's imagine that it's 10 years into the future, and no one has heard of Justin Bieber in a decade. Were that the scenario, he'd still only be 32 and thus decidedly nearer the opening than the close. So we wouldn't do Justin Bieber. But we do have a candidate, one of America's greatest authors, and he even has a new book out, what came out at the beginning of the year. It's called Sailor and Fiddler, Reflections of a 100-Year-Old Author. Actually, on May 27th this year, Herman Wouk turned 101. He served in the Navy during World War II, and he later wrote The Caine Mutiny. That was 1951's Pulitzer Prize winner for fiction. And of course, that became a super classic film. Humphrey Bogart, Ben Johnson, Fred MacMurray. But I got him. I proved it with the strawberries. He also wrote The Winds of War. That was a terrific book. And it became a television movie. And the sequel, War and Remembrance, also became a TV movie. By the way, if you've seen the TV movies, but if you haven't, I'd recommend you read the books. Winds of War sets up the backstory. And the sequel, War and Remembrance, your heart goes into your stomach or your throat. Sometimes you feel like your hair is standing on end when you read in the novel some of the concentration camps. But it's his account of the Battle of Midway. The Battle of Midway. The bravery of the sailors and the aviators, and some of the luck that they needed. Honestly, if you just read his account of the Battle of Midway, if you don't read any of the other book or the other book, if you only read the chapter or two that is the Battle of Midway, you will have tears come to your eyes, and you will never ever again think about armed conflict in the same way. I think Mr. Wouk deserves a thank you for the gifts he's given us. If you agree, you can write him at Herman Wouk, Author Mail, Hatchet Book Group, Grand Central Publishing, 1290 Avenue of the Americas, New York, New York, 10104. And if you're sending it from abroad, you might add USA. Finally this, and yes, it's been hot. And yes, Gracie, it's a dark start to the day. But I thought we would take a quick look back what we did about the heat in days gone by. This is from the Saturday Evening Post, Norman Rockwell, of course, from the year 1921. And this one is called No Swimming. Looks like they changed their mind. It's all right. I don't believe everything I read either. So, as you try to keep cool, here it is, really hot. Remember, it's just 5 months from today, and who knows, you might get lucky. You might be having a warm kiss on a bone-chillingly cold New Year's Eve. It is true, there are just 22 weeks until then. And I hope that the first one of those 22, the one upcoming, is the best one you've ever had.